And now we have finished cookie. No, I'm kidding. Sorry about that. We just added our eggs to our chocolate chip cookie batter, so we're all good. 2 eggs just went in there. It looks so beautiful already. Well, if I were a kid, I'd be eating this right now, but as an adult, I know raw eggs, I shouldn't be eating it, whatever. To this, I'm adding about a teaspoon of vanilla. If you have vanilla bean paste, I love that too. Has anybody noticed how expensive vanilla is? It's like a shocker. Because I think there were like big storms that like took out a bunch of the crops. It is such a bummer because it's so expensive. So if you don't, I'd rather you leave the vanilla out than add the fake stuff. That's totally fine. That burnt noisette gives it so much flavor. Totally get it. I almost had a heart attack at the grocery store. So this is going. I'm going to turn it down just a little because I'm going to start adding my flour mixture. Do you remember what I put in here that's so special? It is that unsweetened chocolate that makes it so happy. And the thing about this unsweetened chocolate, it doesn't make it bitter. It just imparts a lot of chocolate flavor. And because it's unsweetened doesn't mean that it tastes like that weird when you, I know you've done this, when you see chocolate and you're like, I'm going to take a big bite, and you take a big bite and it's unsweetened and you're like, ah. No, it doesn't do that to you. It just makes it so super chocolatey. And we already have sugar in here, so it's all good. Now I'm going to add this to my slowly going mixer. Slowly going. So usually, if I have a lot of flour, I like to put my flour mixture on a piece of parchment because I have the worst aim ever. I think I'm doing great, and then I look down at the counter, and I'm like, why does have my flour on the counter? Happens all the time. Does this happen? I bet it happens to you. If it doesn't, tell me your tricks of good aim with flour. I'd love to know them. So we want to do this relatively quickly, I'm just talking to you, because we don't want to overwork this dough, right? If we overwork it too much, the gluten proteins get too overactivated. You can make for a tough cookie. Look at this. Ah! So now that we have that lovely and mixed, I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to add 2 more. Why, thank you. That was magic. I'm going to add 2 more types of chocolate. And you can already see, oh, this is tilt head, lift. They're all different. So that's already looking so scrumptious. And you can see that chocolate has already permeated the whole batter. But why stop there when you can have so much more chocolate? And I like to add 2 different kinds of chocolate. I'm a bittersweet gal. I like darker chocolates. If you like lighter chocolates like milk chocolate, add it. Add what you like. If you want to add toffee bits, add it. Add what you like. Butterscotch, yes, add it. But I add both chips. This is 8 ounces of chips. Bittersweet, add your favorite kind. That goes straight in. And then 3 ounces of bittersweet bar chocolate. Right, so you just chop it up, but I leave them relatively big. And I'm just going to fold those in. And the reason I like them both is it adds, more chocolatey goodness. Duh. But the other thing is that it allows you to have those 2 kinds of chocolate texture. So the chips tend to stay where they are. They just melt just a little, don't get too ooey gooey. But the bar chocolate really gets melty and spreads a little. Oh, that's my all-time favorite. The other thing is that you can scoop these cookies right away, but if you're not in a rush, which is pretty much impossible, when you're making chocolate chip cookies, it's like a now thing. You can scoop them right away, or you can cover this and leave it in the refrigerator for a day or 2. So what happens if you let that dough develop, it gets this really nice caramelly, deep flavor that is so tasty. Or you could do the following. Bake off a few, eat some cookie dough, put the rest in the fridge. You know, you got a few days of cookie life. It's fantastic. And I know that everyone's like, you shouldn't eat the raw dough, but it's my favorite thing. So, whatever. So gorgeous. Look how beautiful this is. And now I'm going to get to scooping. If you have any questions, ask. Someone has a question.
Tammy wants to know your favorite part about Baked in Vermont and anything you could tease for this weekend's Knitting Club episode.
Ooh, Tammy wants to know what my favorite part of Baked in Vermont is. Aside from my husband Ramo, who's here today, and baking for him, this weekend I'm not baking for him, and he keeps reminding me that. He goes, I'm not in this episode. You didn't bake for me in this episode. Why? And I'm having my knitting friends over. We have a little knitting club, And I bake little treats for them that they could eat while we were knitting. You know, that's kind of hard. So I have little niblets, like some lovely beef little Hot Pockets, little popovers that are so fabulous. And I make one of my favorite things. I love ice cream, and I make a charlotte, which is really it looks really fancy and gorgeous, really easy to do and tasty. And it's a beautiful presentation, but inside is a ton of ice cream, which is so tasty. And cheese gougere, which are cheese puffs, will change your life. The thing about these is that they're so tasty and they're so easy. And when you make them, you can make the batter and scoop them out and freeze them and put them in the freezer. And whenever you have unexpected guests over, you can pop them in the oven from the freezer and bake them off, and you have the best little nubbins ever for your guests. So don't miss it. It's so much fun. And we'll be knitting. And I show you a sweater that I knit when I was a kid that is so 80s ugly, you will cry tears of joy. It's fabulous. Thank you for asking. So I am scooping my cookies, and this is pretty much a medium scoop, but what I do is I have, see, there it's all mounded. I flatten it a little because I don't like mounded tops to my cookies. And when I bake these halfway through the baking time, I call it slamma-jamma. And you have to yell to everyone that you're going to make a loud noise. I actually, when this is in the oven, I just, hey there, I pick up the pan a little and I just drop it so that they deflate. One of the things about having leavening in cookies is that it does make them rise, but it also gives them a tender texture. So we're looking for not a flat cookie, but not a cakey cookie. So I do the slamma-jamma to give that chew to the cookie. And it's also just fun to do. It's fun to slam a cookie. Any more questions while we scoop?
Yeah, Maria notices you're using a scoop. What's the main reason for that?
So Maria wants to know why I'm using a scoop. What's the main reason for it? And yeah, you could use a spoon, right? And just take it, but this is for uniformity. So when you want all your cookies to look gorgeous, which I know you do, perfectly round and fun, and also for all of them to be the same size so they bake evenly. But what I'm also careful to do is when I pack this, I make sure that each one is packed so it has the same amount of dough in each scoop. So when I go in, I fill it up, and it usually goes over, and then I knock it against the side of the bowl to pack it in so that each one has relatively the same amount of dough and chocolate chips, and then they will bake evenly. So you don't get the really, really crispy ones in the middle, and then the rest of them are just perfect. So another question, ask away.
Morgan wants to know about the parchment paper. Do you think aluminum works, a silk hat?
So Laura wants to know what about the parchment paper, whether that's the way to go for cookies or to use aluminum or silpat. My preference is parchment paper because it's really easy to get, and it actually does help keep the cookies from over browning. You think, oh, this is so thin, why can't I just put them straight on the grease this? It actually stops them from browning too much. Just that little piece of paper. Parchment also has a little bit of silicone in it so that it's non-stick. Aluminum will bring too much heat to the equation, creating over browning. Silpat's fantastic. The problem is you see I've almost already done scooping all my cookies. You just have to have more than one silpat if you want to do a batch of cookies quickly. Otherwise, if you want to do it one at a time, that's no problem with something like cookie dough because you can let this sit around. So I think silpat is fantastic as well. And it's a nice barrier between the pan heat and, the cookie. So that's fantastic. So I love silpat. So, but no aluminum foil. Not for me anyway. Any more questions?
Carolee just wants to know in general what your favorite dessert is.
So Carolee wants to know in general what my favorite dessert is. And I've got to tell you, I'm a bit of a swinger when it comes to desserts. I like them all so much. But it also depends on the season. So if it's strawberry season, I love strawberry Fraser, which is this really yummy sponge cake with almost like a strawberry mousse in the inside and strawberries ringing the outside. And then when strawberry season's away, we have peaches, like a peach crumble, so good. Or it depends on what people are like. If I'm making something and I'm teaching something like puff pastry, it's my favorite thing to do because I get to see the joy in people's faces learning the magic of puff pastry. So I really love it all. Right now, I'm loving the one I'm with. My favorite is chocolate chip cookies. So today that's my favorite. And I really want some chocolate chip cookies. So these are going to go into the oven. And remember, during the middle of baking, I'm going to slam a jam of these. And here's just another tip. Because I know a lot of you are frustrated with baking recipes specifically about baking times. That's one of the things that usually everything else is fine, but the baking time is like, wah, wah, and you're like, this recipe's wrong. It's because ovens are big fat liars. Liars. It's not you, it's them. And so ovens can vary from 25 to 50 degrees up and down. And the heat element can be different from the recipe writer's oven and your oven. So those things can get so wonky, and I'm so sorry. I wish I could fix it all for you because it's so unfair. So get to know your oven, get an oven thermometer just to make sure that it's relatively right on target, and then forgive yourself because it's not you, it's the oven. Write a letter of complaint. I'm there with you. But just get to know it and adjust the temperature accordingly, and eat cookies as often as you can. So thank you so much for joining us. I had such a great time. I'm going to sit here and eat some cookies. Oh, one more question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Wants to see if she can see what they look like cooked.
Oh, you want to see what they look like? Of course you do. I was worrying that if I showed them to people, they'd want to eat them and I couldn't take them home. Bummer, man. And here they are. Aren't they beautimous? So you can see where you have them more melt, like this one. Look, that's the melty big chocolate, and then they're more contained bits of chocolate. And then you can see that chocolate sprinkled throughout from the unsweetened chocolate. It is so good. And one more question.
Our last question for Maria, when can she catch Baked in Vermont?
Maria wants to know, when can you catch Baked in Vermont? Well, it's on Sundays at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, 11:30 Central. See? But check your local listings. I would love for you to join us. Usually, like a few minutes before the show comes on, we'll do a live Facebook from our baking classes so you can see what it looks like. And we're usually having a baking class during the airing of the show. So Ray will put on the TV and he'll go, wait a second, you're in a baking class on TV. Wait a second, you're baking class here. It's like mind blown. So come watch a show with me. I love to get any of your questions after the show. I'm here for your baking needs. And thank you so much for joining us, sweet people. I had the best time answering your questions. Bye. Bye.